know, Mr. Connor.
Sure. There you go.
Thanks, Doctor.
All I could think was as I
Very
opened
good.
the door, I was like, oh.
So we're going to get started. Welcome everybody to the Board of Education meeting, back in person since March, so that's awful nice. So just a quick open public meeting statement. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the school districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Board Administrator's offices, sent to the clerks of the Borough, Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP. Peter, would you mind taking attendance?
Sure, Mr. Gilville.
Here. Oh.
Ms. Chimarelli.
Here.
Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Rogers. Here. Mr. Smith. Here. Mr. Levy. Here. And Ms. Weber.
Here.
8 present and accounted for.
If you're able, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, in liberty and justice for all.
Not working? I can share. Here you go. Right. We're good. Excellent. So just by way of President's comments, I want to wish a belated Happy Father's Day to all the dads in the room and not in the room. So Happy Father's Day, gentlemen. Well deserved. I'm sure it was different than most years.
Nope.
And also I want to welcome everybody back. It's great to see the board members live and in person. I haven't seen them all live since March, right before we all closed down the school. So welcome back and thank you for coming up from wherever it is that you are holding up and working from home. So thank you all for being back. Since it's about 157 degrees in here, I'm just going to move this right along to Dr. LaSousa. Thank you, Ms. Weber.
It's great to see everyone again. I was a little self-conscious about being on camera because I didn't know how the light in here would, look on my hair, but seems to be okay. And I'm smiling under the mask now that we're back in school. First step forward, better place we were in a couple months ago. So it's exciting to be back. I don't have necessarily an update on the reopening of schools that is detailed or is what everyone might be expecting or want to hear. Our last board meeting was in the middle of May. It's now June 22nd, and I think probably every week that has elapsed since that time in May, we've gotten new guidance and new guidelines from the governor's office about different elements of our society opening back up again. It seems like the last brick to fall will probably be public schools because we don't open up until close to September. And from what we're told, that guidance is coming this week. By the end of this week is what we've sort of been told through the grapevine. So we're waiting on Governor Murphy's guidance about schools reopening. And at that point, we'll make firm decisions about what we will look like when we open. Even though we don't have firm guidance, we can, probably assume some things based on the guidance that has been issued, like for child care centers, the Rutgers reopening plan that was announced on Friday. So I think it's a safe assumption that we'll have some type of health screening on a daily basis for all staff and students. What exactly that health screening will entail remains to be seen. It could be the type of thing where there's a checklist that families need to at least go through, perhaps even submit somehow before the school day begins. Could be temperature checks, of course, which is what the NJSIA released or issued on Friday also for the first phase of getting sports back and going. So that's one element that I think is pretty safe to assume we'll have to figure out in one form or another, depending on what the guidance is. I'd say that it looks like there will be some degree of social distancing. The biggest question that we have when the governor issues the guidelines will be what are the requirements for social distancing, because almost every other question flows from that question. If social distancing is mandated, then the buildings are not going to be full when we return in September, and we will have a rotational schedule for students to come to school physically, and they'll be doing at least some work from home. And then, of course, we have a lot of health protocols that we are eager to understand. Some of them involve our nurses' offices and what type of equipment or protective gear will be required in nurses' offices. The Rutgers plan lays out a different set of face coverings and PPE for everyday use for students and staff members, and then a different class of equipment and protective gear for health offices. And I would expect that we will see something similar. And to that end also, we need pretty firm and detailed guidance about our students who have underlying health conditions or who may reside in the home of a parent who has an underlying health condition. And all of this gets very complicated when you start driving into the details. So we're going to wait. Obviously, we've been planning for every contingency we can think of. We've been having discussions administratively. We've been having informal conversations with teachers. And once we get the rules of the game, we'll be able to take some more concrete steps forward. So from a timeline perspective, just to kind of sum this up, if we're fortunate enough to get the guidance this week, that will leave next week as the week leading up to the July 4th holiday, where we can start to kind of put some things in motion, and then we'll take the month of July probably to round out all of the plans, the goal being to be able to notify all families in the district of what school will look like by the end of July. And I'd say that that's kind of where we are in a roundabout fashion without having any of the guidance yet.
So have you done the master schedule, even though you don't know what it's going to look like? For example, you may have to have, you had mentioned to us earlier, content area specialists that will maybe deliver instruction, but you may not have the traditional, this is your homeroom teacher, this is your social studies teacher. Like, have you just run the master schedule as if we're going back and then you're going to change it depending on what comes down the pike?
As of right now, we have our master schedules that we always have in place, and the high school and the middle school are the places where we need the most time for master schedules. The K through 5 buildings, really, it's just homeroom assignments. It's not as complicated. So we have our master schedules ready in the event we do return like a normal year. I mean, maybe we'll return and the only modification will be that students will be in face masks. I think that's unlikely, but that's always a possibility. We have been working on our schedules if we're purely virtual and we can't open schools at all. We don't anticipate that that will be a likely scenario, but we want to have that as a backstop in the event that at any moment next year we're forced online again. And then in the interim, we've got these hybrid models that we've been discussing. We're not far enough down the field yet to commit to something super alternative. One of our, I think, limitations to really blowing up the schedule is just being able to know and rely upon which staff members can be present, which staff members might not be able to be present, the places where we have very specialized subject matter, where, in other words, we have a lot of sections of 9th grade English, but we don't have that many sections of AP German. So to build a schedule that really kind of blows up what we usually do, we would need a lot of certainty about what the whole school year would look like, and not be worried that we would revert to a typical school year at any point. And we'd have to make sure that we can distribute our staff in a way that we can handle every type of course that we offer. It's probably going to be much easier to take our current master schedules and modify them so that they're hybrid in some way.
Okay.
I guess the biggest risk is the change of classrooms. That's what, 3 minutes in between? So you go to I don't know if you can, because I don't know if 100% of the freshmen are there at the same time or at the same classes, but if you could go, they start at whatever, 7:14 and 7:18 and 7:22. It's going to impact the day, but at least you're limiting the number of kids that are passing each other in the halls. I don't know if that could work, but I'd imagine some kids, a freshman may take a sophomore class, but that might be something to think about, just to try to keep, the bumping and grinding that goes on in between classes, because everyone's trying to move around. So,
yeah, we've discussed. We probably will have to abbreviate the school day no matter what happens, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is what Matt was just saying. if we have, however many students we have in a building, we're probably going to have to increase the amount of passing time, and we probably may need to decrease the amount of opportunity students have to come together in big groups. So eliminating the lunch period, for example, is something we've discussed. So if we eliminated lunch, if we only had 4 or 5 classes that we're passing through in the course of a day, let's say, to keep the day short enough so students could still get home at a reasonable time to eat lunch, we could tell students to bring a snack to school, just like, you know, they were, regardless of the grade level. They could eat a snack in a classroom. We'd have to figure some issues out with allergies and such, but we wouldn't ever congregate kids in a big space like this. We would need more passing time, and then we anticipate, and I sent a survey out to parents on Friday to gather a little sense of where we might be. We do anticipate that some percentage of our students will not return, and we even anticipate, some of us, that the governor may require school districts to offer virtual learning for those families who don't want to send their students back to school. That might not happen, but that's just something that some of us have talked about. So if we have to provide online instruction for a fair number of students, say 10% or 20%, which would be 400 to 800 kids in our case, we would probably have to shorten the school day in some way so that teachers have time to correspond with those students, prepare assignments for them, create content for students that are not coming to school. And if we're on a hybrid model of any kind, the teachers are going to need that time to do that when the students are not physically present in school.
All right, and secondly, we priced out those temperature machines, so for mass entrance, because most of our kids come through the front door, right?
It depends on the school, and this is kind of like a catch-22 situation. So all of the guidelines that have been released thus far, including for NJSIA, recommend staggering arrival times so that you don't have as many students congregating in one spot. So if we stagger the times or have a few points of entry, then we need more temperature screens in place in those places. We're going to need more than one probably at every school because it will take too long to bring people into the building. But Karen Leister has been in contact with local hospitals, and she's been pricing the contactless temperature screening devices that would give us the best bang for our buck and enable us to get the greatest number of people in the doors quickly. They're a little, some of them are very expensive that can process, tons and tons of people at once. We have some work to do there to figure out what's going to work best for us.
Like, are we doing things in terms of the actual buildings to include protection for the teachers, like opening up plexiglasses on the desks, or is that?
We haven't done that yet, and one of the issues is, like, for example, I know we've looked at face shields. I've gotten 150 solicitations or offers for face shields. But we don't want to do that if that's not going to be in the recommendations from the CDC or anyone else as being protective. So, like, as I looked at the face shields, they say that you can't wear them without the mask. You need to have the mask also. I'm waiting to kind of understand, does the plexiglass, does it do anything really? Like, we're not probably in the type of environment where we can put plexiglass up on every desk, in part because we've been swapping out most of our desks, and in many classrooms in the district, we have tables that actually.
For the teachers, I mean, since they're subject to having all the children kind of come in and out, that they would,
It's one of those questions. So I know colleges are doing this, right? They're putting up plexiglass so that there's a barrier between the professor and the students. Here, at least half of our teachers, if not way more than that, are moving around the room to see what students are doing all the time. They don't stay static in the front of the room. And then the other issue is, I just question, if you've got a plexiglass barrier, even if it's 6 or 7 feet high, you're still breathing in all of the same air, and you have the same air circulation system and air exchange system. So I don't know. If someone told me that was effective and that really reduced the spread, we could look at installing it in all of our classrooms, but it would be very, very costly, and at least at the current time, I haven't seen anything to tell us that that is something that would be as protective as we think it might be.
I think though in certain circumstances, like in speech therapy, in certain situations where a teacher cannot wear a mask, a student cannot wear a mask, we need to make these investments so that we can provide the therapies that are, be able to effectively test and screen our students and be able to provide therapies that they need. And I imagine these, I'm going to call them shields, or these protective, they're hard to come by, and I want us to be prepared. So if we know something like, for example, like speech, we know we cannot provide effective speech therapy with a mask on. So I'm looking at Van, I'm looking at whoever, like, let's go. Like, if we know we need to get these things, and let's start pricing them out now so that we can get these services online the best we can to serve the kids we need to serve. So I'm not talking about like a regular classroom, but in
Yep.
certain cases,
That's
we are
a
going to
good
have
point.
to take a mask off.
Yep.
And Mike, we're not even going to be talking about fall sports until we have more guidance on reopening, correct?
Well, the NJSIA released its guidance on Friday. We're all talking about it and how feasible it is to do. As you all know, one of the laws that Governor Murphy signed while we've been out is that any contract approved by the board must be paid in full, even if you're forced out, and the services rendered as part of that contract can't be rendered. So most school districts are not appointing fall coaches yet, because if they appoint all of their coaches, all of those salaries will be paid, even if the athletic season is canceled the following week. Some of the logistics involved in the guidance that the NJSIA sent is also, can be challenging. So for example, there are temperature screenings with thermometers on site, but they can't be done by the coach that's involved in the activity. They have to be done by someone who is not involved directly in coaching, like an athletic trainer or an athletic director, just off the top of my head as two examples. The athletic directors, of course, are not employed in the summer. The athletic trainers, rather. The athletic director is, but we have to think about, is that going to be feasible to have the athletic director available for every sport that is wanting to convene? There's no contact allowed whatsoever, even in football and soccer and sports that would have close contact normally. You can't share equipment. There are just a whole host of details that we have to attest to and carry out that we're not feeling comfortable putting into effect immediately. So we're still talking about it. The athletic directors are talking about that. And we'll make decisions with the policy committee and the full board as we kind of move forward and get through some of this stuff.
Okay,
So
great.
and just the last point, sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Weber, but normally what happens with athletics is the final day of the spring season, which is usually the meet of champions for track and field. As soon as that event ends, the next day, it's called open season. So any of the coaches for the following school year can start to, interact with their kids and student athletes and help get them prepared for the seasons that will follow the next year. That open season has been suspended until July 13th, and it opens up for the first time July 13th. So the earliest any coach in the state can interact in a way that prepares the students for the following season would be July 13th.
July 30th or 13th?
13th.
13, okay. All right, so we have some time on that.
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions for Mike on the reopening, although we have no answers? No, not.
Right.
We have more questions than answers for sure. Okay, so moving along, Dr. LaSousa, there's an annual discipline report. Is that up next?
Yes, thank you. So you will recall that every year one of our required reports to deliver is the annual discipline report for the school year that is finishing up. And every year we ask our middle school assistant principal, who handles discipline and oversees that, Anthony Giaconia, to join us, as well as Lori Gironda, who does the same at the high school. We don't This past year in particular, since we ended in March, we didn't really have any significant disciplinary issues to talk about K through 5. So the bulk of all the discipline in the district occurs at the 6 through 12 level. So I'm going to introduce Anthony and Lori. This year, because we thought we didn't know if we'd be in person for this meeting, Anthony and Lori put together a kind of like a screencast about a month ago. So we'll just watch the video, and then they're here to take any questions that you have.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Dr. LaSousa, and members of the community. I am Anthony Giaconia, Assistant Principal at Chatham Middle School, and tonight I'd like to take you through the trends in discipline at CMS for the 2019-20 school year. To begin with, you will know as we make our way through the data tonight that most students who committed an infraction of the school rules did not reoffend. In addition, only a small number of students were involved in committing Ssds incidents this year. Ssds stands for Student Safety Data System, and these are infractions that deal with violence, vandalism, substance and weapon offenses, and HIB. Furthermore, you'll also observe that we continue to implement a strong anti-bullying initiative at the middle school. The next two slides contain some of the typical infractions of school rules at CMS along with their accompanying consequences. Usually, discipline ranges from warnings and conferences with administration and counselors to detentions and suspensions. Here you will notice that 998 students were enrolled at CMS this year, and 75 discipline type and Ssds incidents were committed. This amounts to 0.075 incidents per student. Of the students who violated the school rules, 39 of them, or 3.9% of the population, did so once and did not reoffend. 2 students, 0.20% of the student body, committed 2 incidents. 6 students, 0.60% of the student body, committed 3 to 4 incidents, and 2 additional students committed 5+ incidents. In terms of Ssds incidents, we had 6 confirmed acts of HIB out of 20 investigations. We also had 1 violation involving damage to property, 1 incident involving a threat, and 1 biased incident. Overall, 5 students were involved in committing this type of infraction this year, with some of them reoffending. As for suspensions, 6 students, 0.60% of the student body, were suspended once this year, and 1 student, 0.10% of the student body, was suspended more than once. This amounted to 15.5 total days of suspension. When we look at the breakdown of the 49 students who violated the school rules this year, you will notice that far more boys committed offenses than girls, with the former contributing to 93.9% of the offenses, while the latter contributed to 6.1%. In addition, both the 6th and 8th grades accounted for 28.6% of all incidents this year, while the 7th grade, the largest at CMS, accounted for 42.9%. As opposed to discipline-type incidents, file-type infractions include information on confirmed HIB targets and students who are excessively absent or late to school. This year, 10 students contributed to 11 file-type incidents, with 6 of them being HIB targets and 5 of them being chronically late to school. In an attempt to remedy the latter, a progressive set of consequences has been implemented, including sending letters and notifications home to parents, holding student conferences, and if necessary, assigning detentions. In terms of HIB, 20 investigations were conducted, with 6 of them, or 30%, being confirmed. 4 of the 6 incidents involved verbal comments, and 2 of them involved a physical act. Of the students who committed a HIB offense this year, 2 of them reoffended. When we look at a breakdown of the HIB reports for 2019-2020, parents filed 11 of the 20 reports, with 27.3% of them being confirmed. Students filed 6 reports, with 33.3% of them being confirmed, and staff members filed 3 reports, with 1 of them being confirmed. Of the confirmed HIB reports, 3 of them were motivated by the targeted student's disability, 2 of them were motivated by the targeted student's weight, and 1 of them was motivated by the perceived intelligence level of the targeted student. There is a collaborative school-wide effort at CMS to address and reduce instances of HIB. This initiative includes the following: HIB education pieces for students, staff, and parents at the beginning of each school year, curricular tie-ins to the themes of tolerance, respect, and diversity in the subject areas of ELA, social studies, cycle classes, art, and music, character education lessons infused into the health curriculum, student clubs such as our Acceptance Alliance that brings together students who are interested in making CMS a more accepting place in terms of diversity, week of respect activities that are focused on the themes of community and respect for others, mindfulness/wellness events such as an Unplugged Day and School Spirit Days, Challenge Day, which is a community building exercise for some of our 8th grade students, a student school safety team which involves administrators and counselors meeting with students on a regular basis to discuss school climate, workshops and resources for staff members on mindfulness and social emotional learning, courtesy of Mrs. Mandala, our student assistance counselor, a virtual self-care challenge that was sent out to the community at the beginning of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, SEL strategies for distance learning that were sent out to staff members, courtesy of Ms. Goldberg, a sixth grade teacher at CMS. These strategies served as resources that the teachers could then pass on to their students, and remedial counseling and HIB lessons for HIV offenders. I'd like to thank you for your time and invite you to get in contact with me if you should have any questions.
Good evening. I'm Lori Gironda, Assistant Principal at Chatham High School. I'd like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Ssds, and the community for inviting me to share tonight's 2019-2020 school discipline report with you. First and foremost, it's important to note that a very small percentage of students at Chatham High School commit Ssds incidents, those which require reporting to the state. Most of these incidents involved use and possession of vaping paraphernalia containing THC. The high school will continue to address this issue through our policies and health curriculum. The next 3 slides illustrate typical infractions that our students might commit, along with the discipline associated with each. Disciplinary consequences include warnings, detentions, Saturday schools, or suspensions, as well as removal of senior privileges. Our incidents are broken into 2 categories: discipline type, which include Ssds incidents and more major infractions of school rules, and file type, which center mainly on attendance concerns and other minor violations. Between September and March, there were 157 discipline type incidents. Those incidents were committed by 103 students, representing 7.6% of our student body. Of those students, 4 committed between 5 and 10 incidents, representing 0.2% of our student body. There were no students who committed more than 10 incidents this year. The school is required to report Student Safety Data System, or Ssds incidents, to the state. These would include infractions such as harassment, intimidation, and bullying, substance use or possession, violence, or vandalism. This year's Ssds incidents include 4 confirmed HIB incidents, 2 substance use and possession incidents, and 1 assault. The consequence for these incidents usually range from 1 or more Saturday detentions to out-of-school suspension. 8 students received 1 or more out-of-school suspensions this year, representing 0.6% of our student body. 2 of those students were suspended more than once. The majority of the suspensions involved possession or use of vaping paraphernalia, as our updated school policy specifies that out-of-school suspension will be issued upon first offense for possession or use of any such paraphernalia. Our data shows that approximately 70% of discipline-type incidents were committed by male students, whereas approximately 30% were committed by female students. Grade 9 was responsible for 31% of the incidents on file, followed by grade 12 with 28.2%, grade 11 with 23.3%, and grade 10 with 17.5%. As mentioned earlier, file type infractions are more minor infractions of school rules, mostly dealing with attendance. There were 332 file type incidents on record, with 221 students committing those incidents. Students who commit multiple file type incidents are usually habitually late to school. Chatham High School addresses such attendance concerns through a variety of means which are outlined on this slide. During the 2019-2020 school year, 11 reports of possible harassment, intimidation, or bullying were made, and 5 were subject to a formal investigation. 4 of those 5 resulted in findings of HIB. All reports, whether subject to formal investigation or not, are also investigated as code of conduct, and discipline may be assigned to students who are found to have violated the school rules. There were a total of 5 offenders among the 4 HIB incidents, with 1 student offending twice. The distinguishing characteristics targeted in this year's HIB incidents included physical appearance, religion, and disability status. Of the 11 reports of possible HIB filed, 7 were generated by parents and 4 were generated by students. 28.5% of the reports generated by parents resulted in confirmed HIB, while 50% of reports coming from students resulted in confirmed HIB. As in previous years, the high school continues to address school climate and culture through a variety of programs and approaches, including our Links and new student ambassador programs, Week of Respect activities, including Challenge Day, and our Learn Unified, Play Unified activities with ECLC. We also continue to address topics relating to diversity, inclusion, and character development throughout the curriculum and work to provide remedial measures through counseling for those students who are found to have committed HIB. Thank you for the opportunity to share this discipline report with you tonight. I welcome you to reach out to me with any questions.
Overarching question, year over year, are we seeing the trends go down? For example, at the middle school, a lot of it's bullying, and Lori, at the high school, a lot of it's vaping. I mean, is the vaping going down? It seems to be in the streets, and when you see kids, it seems to be trending down as not as cool, or, you know, past it. I know the college kids are kind of a little bit over the vaping scene. Has that trickled down to the high school yet?
Well, we did see less of it this year, but I think that part of that was also due to a change that we made in terms of the bathroom doors, where we prop those open. I mean, obviously there's still privacy for all of the students who are in there, but I believe that it really provided less of an opportunity, a little bit more of a deterrent. And I think, you know, the other piece is that our policy now dictates that on the first offense, students are suspended out of school. And I think that that has also been a deterrent from students vaping.
Okay. And how about the bullying? Are we trending down? Because well, the high school has so few infractions.
Yeah, the high school, yeah.
Yeah, that was more of a middle school type of question, if you don't mind, Anthony.
No problem. I would say, yeah, we are on a downward trend. I would say a lot of it, believe, has to do with our HIB education pieces, which happen at the beginning of each year. So for parents, we have a video that we show on back to school night that kind of outlines what HIB is, what it looks like, and ways to help us to combat HIB in the upcoming year.
Right.
For students, myself, Mr. Trebor, and the counselors, we get into all of the classes during the week of respect, and we do a short HIB presentation going over a lot of the same information. What HIB is, what you should and should not do.
Right.
And for the, so we have the parents and the staff members, of course. The staff members get training as well on the very first day of school at their faculty meeting. So they are constantly on the lookout for anything that could possibly be HIB, and they report that immediately to myself or Mrs. Jaworski. We also have training for our custodians and for our cafeteria workers as well.
Okay, great. One of the casualties of not being in school is we lost an opportunity to have meaningful dialogue with the students as they saw some of the events, the current events, George Floyd, you know, all of the current events. We just lost an absolute phenomenal opportunity to talk about tolerance and acceptance, and, you know, hopefully we can pick some of that up in the fall and, you know, embed it into the curriculum. But you know, we're always hoping to see those numbers trend down, and I think we have over the years, at least the 9 years that I've been sitting in this chair. But there's always work to be done, and there's certainly kids that will always feel, you know, bullied, and we need to address all of those issues. I'm happy to see the vaping go down. And just to clarify, when Lori said we took all the doors off, she means the door to the hallway, not all the stall doors. Just to clarify, in case people are aghast at, oh my goodness, there's no doors on the bathrooms?
They're on, they're just propped. They're propped.
Yeah.
There are still doors.
There's still doors.
There are doors on the back.
Does anybody else have any questions or clarification on any of that? Did you have any out-of-school incidents while the schools were closed? We had in the past. I wasn't sure if there's any that came up.
I did have 2 reports of possible situations that needed to be investigated, and they were investigated and handled.
Okay,
where
so there
appropriate.
were still a couple. Okay, very good.
At the middle school level, we also had some minor reports as well. They were addressed through the parents and with the counselor's help as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you both for coming out tonight. They don't get a summer. A little bit of a break. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. LaSousa on any of that? Any of the programs that are being implemented? I know the curriculum committee is meeting on Wednesday to talk a little bit further about the curriculum and tolerance and social, you know, how you embed some of this into current affairs, into the curriculum. Right, Lada, that's teed up? That is correct. Okay. Okay, excellent. So no other questions? Then we're going to move on. We have our open campus request, Mike?
Thank you. Our rising seniors are requesting open campus again, which this year could have the benefit of reducing the number of students in the school at the same time. So they submitted a letter that I shared with you, outlining their commitment to being responsible and doing what past classes have done. I didn't know if any of you had a question for Ms. Gironda, who's been in correspondence with some of the officers.
Are you giving it a thumbs up, Ms. Gironda? You are. Very good. I didn't want to go into too much detail. I would like, if it's safe, sorry, Ryan, if it's safe, are you one of the class officers, sir? Yeah. All right, well, you'll be here anyway because you film all our meetings. I would like to invite the seniors, or at least a couple of representatives, to maybe, if it's safe and possible, in the fall to come join us so we can, see them face to face. And Ryan, your class has been great so far. I just want to remind your class that, one, it's a privilege, and two, you all have the responsibility to keep an eye on each other. Whether you're in school or out of school, if you see somebody doing something stupid or they're a knucklehead, it's your job to keep an eye on them, just like you would for one of your siblings. You pull them back, you reel them in, you get them the help they need. So I would like to maybe invite them back in the fall when it's safe to maybe have a dialogue and make sure that they know they're responsible for their classmates. So I have no objection to it. Conditional until if we're not back in school, then they have open campus as much as they want.
There you go.
Does anybody else have any comments about open campus, such that it is? No? Excellent. Very good. Sorry, Ryan, you're taking the brunt of your senior class right now. So thank you for standing in for them. So Peter, let's move on to construction update.
Sure, very quickly, the middle school auditorium is just about done, just waiting on the final inspections. The construction at the middle school on the nurse's restroom has all been vetted. The contractor will start, I believe, next Monday, and the asbestos abatement is scheduled for Wednesday, July 8th, and that'll take approximately a week. The contractor has been put on notice that he needs to be finished by August 15th, and there should be no obstacles. The other brief report is that the district did continue to provide meals to any of the free and reduced students that wanted them. We did approximately 35 meals a day, and I do want to, thank the cafeteria staff, and especially Bob McBreen, because he became the delivery man to a lot of these people. And I'd also like to give shout outs to all of the groups in Chatham, especially Joanne Carroll, and I believe it's Beth Paulson, who worked on trying to arrange the Gargiulo produce, which is available every Wednesday at the middle school lot by the Methodist Church. Okay. And I believe their bridges are still distributing like bag lunches. So there is some help out there for the people in Chatham that do need it. So those people have gone above and beyond. That's all I have for now, unless there's any questions.
Just the middle school be done soon?
Yes, we were just waiting on the final inspection. The final fire inspection passed, or the electrical part of the fire passed. They were just waiting for the final building inspection. Okay. So it's just a matter of getting it all scheduled with the building department.
And those can take place, correct? There's no moratorium on building inspections?
No, those can take place. It's just a matter of when the building department was available and coordinating the contractor.
Okay, so do you anticipate that being complete by the next board meeting?
Oh, should definitely be. We'll follow up to make sure.
I'm going to make a note.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Peter on any of that? No, very good. Moving over to committee reports, and for personnel.
Yeah, we met on May 27th and just discussed any openings that we had in personnel, but we seem to be in pretty good shape for the fall, so.
Are we all buttoned up, Mike, except for maybe leave replacements?
I think we're about buttoned up except for leave replacements. Miss Grant couldn't make it tonight. Obviously, I sent a letter out to the Washington Avenue and Lafayette Avenue parents about Mr. Fryer taking over for Miss Dudlow during her leave of absence that's coming up quickly. And off the top of my head, I don't think we have any vacancies at the moment, but I could be wrong. There could be one or two, but we're plugging them quickly.
Okay, excellent. Are you able to resume in-person interviews, or no, you're still doing them virtually?
We haven't done that yet. We've stuck to virtual. This is the first real in-person. We've had some in-person meetings here and there, but we haven't resumed in-person interviews.
Okay,
yet.
I'll leave that up to you whenever you feel comfortable with that, you and Beth. Curriculum, Ms. Kenny?
We are meeting on Wednesday on Zoom at 6:30.
Is that virtual? Did you say Zoom? Oh, okay. Very good, thanks. Thanks. Finance and facilities, Matt?
Yes, we met on June the 10th. A number of things. One will be on your agenda today, which is the traditional transfer to capital reserve, which happens at the end of every fiscal year. Next one, we actually punted this back to the policy committee, talking about the tuition amounts for staff members and their children. We discussed the current staff member tuition rate of 35% of the current tuition rate. We really had no great input in terms of how we wanted to change that, so we again punted that back to the policy committee. We did make an adjustment. Full day kindergarten, generally speaking, there's a first payment due on June the 1st, a second payment due on July the 1st. We actually extended the final payment back to December 1st, just because we have no idea what's going to go on in the fall school year.
Right.
And then last but not least, we did discuss the graduation, and hopefully having that. It appears as though, from what Mr. Murphy said today, is that they will be at a 500-person capacity outside by July 6th, which will make it, give us the ability to do two
Yes. Yep.
separate graduations and try to merge them in as best possible.
Can I just ask a question on that? Do we have a time yet on that? Because, you know, parents do work. Like, I think we need to get something out there, if we can, on what time of day they're planning to do. Like, is it morning? Is it?
The plan right now is 9 a.m. and noon.
Okay, got it.
But that, I don't know that that's set in stone, but that's what we've discussed.
So it's definitely not evening. It's supposed to be during the day. Okay.
Yes.
I just think we could need to, when we
Yep.
can, get that out
Yep,
sooner rather
okay.
than later, just so people aren't scheduling work meetings and whatever.
Good.
Thank you.
And we'll probably meet in, we're gonna have to meet, we're gonna have to meet probably sometime in July, because we're not gonna get our state aid numbers until that time frame. But have you heard any mumblings on state aid?
We've only heard that at the end of August, there will be another announcement, and the expectation is that we'll lose additional funding.
Additional could be as much as all of it. We hope.
That I don't know.
Holy crap.
And that's all I got.
Okay, then we're gonna go over to Mr. Ryan on policy and planning, since Matt punted a bunch of stuff to you.
Yeah, so policy met on June 3rd. It was sort of a light agenda, considering what we have coming up in front of us here in the next couple of weeks. At this point, we didn't have a lot of guidance on June 3rd, but we were trying to discuss and deal with what we're going to do with our summer programming, both in terms of camps and in terms of ESY. So we discussed the work-family connection, who uses Washington Avenue School for their activities in the summer. That particular organization is a licensed healthcare facility. They run that program based on the guidelines that have been provided by the state: temperature screenings, smaller groups, static groups, enhanced cleanings, masks, etc. So that is a little bit of a different category than some of our other programs. So we decided that that camp should be allowed to open. Other camps, we kind of gave them the decision. You know, we said you can open if you can adhere to these guidelines. And I think 2 of them decided not to, and another one did. That's an outdoor camp at Milton, I believe. In terms of ESY is a completely different situation. ESY involves much stricter medical requirements that we have as a district to protecting not only the staff but the students. And there are various students that may require one-on-one direct attention, or in some cases help from a medical perspective. So we didn't feel that we had enough guidance at that point. And additionally, ESY does require transportation. So we didn't have enough guidance from the state on how to deal with medical issues involving ESY students or the transportation issues. So we decided for now that ESY should be virtual until we get further guidance. Is that your understanding of that? Okay. And we also discussed lights at Cougar Field. We don't know if we're going to have a season, so we're going to punt that until later on.
Okay.
We discussed, as Matt mentioned, children, staff members, and possible tuition rates, which is going to get punted back to us again for further discussion, and possible amendments to the dress code policies, depending on the guidance that we get from the state. If children have to wear masks, we may have to amend the handbook on the dress code. And that's it until we get further guidance, and we're going to be pretty busy over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to say, Mike, pull in whoever you need to, because you're going to be, the policy committee, I think, is going to be super busy, depending on the guidelines that come down.
Yeah.
So wherever you need to tap with, you know, if your committee members aren't available, if you're not available, just tap any one of us. So you have the comm to, you're going to have to drive that home.
Yeah, I think we should expand, for this summer, we should expand the policy committee, make it a little larger and get more input from
Right. We
other
could-
folks perhaps. We'll see.
Well, yeah, we would have to make those open meetings then,
Right, sure.
which is fine. I have no beef with that. You know, if it's critical enough and we need to have an open meeting where there's more than 4 of us present, you know, but if somebody's on vacation, don't hesitate to tap somebody else and, you know.
Sometimes if we can't come to a consensus in the policy committee, we'll have to, you know, decide what to do at that point, bring other
Okay,
folks in.
we could bring in other committees as needed. We can have back-to-back, 6:30 to 7, and then 7 to 7:30, with maybe you piggybacking on both to, you know, to transition some information. But I think it's going to be very busy, and if we have to have additional meetings, we'll do that.
Another thing, Jill, could be even take the issues per se, like building-based issues, academics, health and safety, transportation, and sort of tier them so that policy does not get dumped on pretty much in every aisle, you know, and maybe, you know, have transportation be dealt with under policy, but have certain board members address just transportation. Then have, so that, I mean, this could seriously be a meeting every 3 days based on what comes out. So maybe if we restructure that committee for just this summer.
Literally every issue is a single meeting. You can't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
At this point, you can't have a meeting with 7 issues on the agenda.
Right, so if it's helpful.
Each issue requires a lot of discussion and a lot of
Yes.
input.
So if it's helpful to kind of break it out into
It'll
different
slow it
tiers
down.
and have people offer to serve, I'm happy to do whatever on that committee.
From a policy perspective, our hands are tied. We're basically doing whatever the state says. So I'm not quite sure what our role would be in terms of anything from a policy perspective, just because we're not allowed to.
The problem is that, Matt, that the state may not tell us anything. The state may say it's up to you to decide what to do.
And then
You should,
Then
you
we're-
That's the
may,
issue.
we recommend. We're not hearing the word you must wear
Right.
masks 100% of the time. We're not even hearing who's going to pay for the masks.
And at that point, what we have to do, honestly, is we need to go out to the town and ask for experts and see if we've got experts within the town that could contribute to this, because what would I be able to add from the perspective of, you know, we would need a doctor's input. So we may have to go out, and I would go out and ask for experts, say that anyone who's in town who could assist us in this and have open meetings. I think we need to expand, not only from a board perspective, is expand our usage of a lot of talent that sits in this town, and ask doctors to come in and help us shape some of this. And we have not done this in the past, and it's not been kind of looked positively upon, but hate to tell you, I don't have the expertise to, I don't know how many we don't have any doctors sitting here, is that if you want to really change the role, it may be by, you know, utilizing the talent that sits in this town. There's a lot of it, a lot of untapped talent that could really, really help us shape policies correctly, because, again, if I'm not going to shape anything from a perspective of from medical, and if I do, I don't want that liability, because that's like, you know, me telling what a mechanic to do to my car. So I think this is an opportunity. We've talked about this in facilities for a long time. We've never done it because we can't, because it's a cost perspective. And when you get down to this, when you're really going to get specific in terms of the medical side of what our policies will be doing, I think it would be appropriate to go and ask, and bring it together, a task force from experts in town, if we have them.
Well, we also have the Department of Health that has experts that.
Whoever it is, but
yeah.
I think we need that level of expertise.
Agreed.
There are
there are probably half a dozen task forces right now operating in the state. There's one in the Senate, there's one in the governor's office, there's one in the DOE, there's one in the Assembly. The Department of Health has to be the authority in terms of what the protocols are. Just like every other issue that we deal with that's medical in nature, whether it's the immunizations that we are required to verify, whether it's an infectious disease when we have a breakout, like whooping cough or MRSA or whatever else we deal with. There are protocols that are established by the Department of Health. We have to follow them. All districts do. They should be able to give us that much. And then we have administratively broken into teams similar to what Michelle was describing for some of these issues, and we can definitely fold in. My thinking was more that the policy committee would be getting some guidance from Matt Giacobbe's office about the legal, the liabilities around certain decisions that will need to be made inside of the guidelines that the DOH and the DOE give us, and that we would need some type of frequency of meetings depending on what kind of decisions have to be made.
Matt, I just want to comment. We keep hearing a lot of opinions. Every leading epidemiologist I listen to, including the one who runs our Department of Health, Dr. Fauci, there's many unknowns, right? So no matter what we do, anyone who comes to school is susceptible to getting COVID, or is in a large group or a small group or a room like this. So to Mike's point, and I think that your points are well taken, but to Mike's point, we have to follow the guidelines that the state gives us, and from a legal perspective, we're going to have to be guided by our counsel as to what we can do to try to be as reasonable under the circumstances as possible. There's no givens here. I mean, we could get 20 experts and they're all going to have a different opinion. I mean, it's just, nobody really understands what's going to happen in September, and I don't think we're going to know what's going to happen in September when September is here. The only person I hear that seems to think we don't have a problem in this country is the president. Everybody else that I've heard who has a lot more experience than him seems to think that we are not going to be out of the woods for quite a long time, including a potential other surge in the fall and possibly the summer. So, anybody who has a crystal ball, I want to hear them, but I haven't seen anybody who has one, much like the stock market. I just don't think we have any real guidance here, because we're dealing with something that we haven't dealt with as a country, certainly not in our lifetimes. And we have no national policy to deal with it. We have a state-by-state hodgepodge of policies based on what governors and locales want to do. That's a problem, in my humble opinion. So, Mike, I think your guidance on the Department of Health is sound, but I think we are in for a lot of uncertainty regardless of what we do. I don't know, we could sit here and debate it all we want, but I don't know any solid approach here where we lack risk. We're dealing with a lot of risk that's unknown.
And just to remind the board, because the 3 of our buildings are in the borough and 3 of our school buildings are in the township, we have 2 different Board of Health representatives, so it complicates it a little bit further. Hopefully they're on the same page as they give us guidance that we don't have the borough schools doing one thing and the township schools doing another. I have not seen that to be the case, but I just want to remind folks that we have 2 different Board of Healths that impact the school buildings. I think we need to pick this up after Friday when we're supposed to get more guidance, and it's my understanding that a lot of questions were put up to the governors and the Department of Education, and they have promised to answer the majority of the questions. So I think we need to pick this up after we get the guidance or the guidelines, and then see where we need to pull in what experts, and then whatever committees we need to pull together, we'll pull together, even if we have to do split sessions with some overlap of key people.
And there's been no date for the Department of Health to have to provide us with an update, right? Just the Department of Education.
Just the governor, quite frankly, saying there's going to be guidance by the end of the week. That's all we've heard definitively.
Right.
But I don't know that we can make any moves beyond that until we get that in our hands.
Right.
And hopefully it's not going to be up to 563 districts in the state to interpret it. That would be a disaster. Sorry, could you repeat that, Mike?
All of the guidelines so far for summer camps, for childcare facilities, for pools, they've all been issued by the Department of Health.
Okay.
So our expectation was that the governor would issue Department of Health specific guidelines for school districts.
Okay.
And the regional departments of health have to go along with what the state departments of health say? Is there any leniency there?
I think that every local Department of Health reports to the State Department of Health.
Gotcha.
But they often will build in the local circumstances into whatever decision tree you have to follow.
Okay. I think that was the longest policy and planning committee report in the history of Board of Education.
Next one will be longer.
Next one will be a lot longer.
Yes, it will be a lot longer. We look forward to it. But really, Mike, Ryan, if you need to tap whoever, we're here for you. Liaison reports, I do not have anything from the borough. They're meeting actually right now, and I just want to point out that Ed is at our meeting, even though they conflicted. Thank you, Ed. Okay, so Lotta?
Yes, as we said, CEF would like to give a heartfelt thank you to all of the donors. If you go visit chathamedfoundation.org, you can enjoy the highlights of the evening of recognition, which brought students, teachers, and donors together for a showcase of grants and unique hands-on experience. Chatham Ed Foundation, again, it's chathamedfoundation.org, and it's not too late to donate. While we cannot fully predict all the challenges that await us in transitioning back to school, additional financial support from our community will position CEF to help meet the demands facing the school district. This may include transforming learning environments, enhance safety and sanitation protocols, and fund innovative professional development and alternative teaching and learning methods. We hope that everyone has a safe and wonderful summer. And thank you again.
Okay, thanks, Lotta. Connor, does Lotta come across on the microphone clear? Very soft. Very soft? Okay. So the summary was you wanted to thank all the donors.
Yes, and you can check out chathamedfoundation.org if you'd like to continue to donate.
Okay, see, this wouldn't be a problem if we all knew sign language. Just saying. Thank you, Bradley. Any other, did the rec department meet, Matt? No. Okay, very good. I didn't know if a district cabinet certainly did not. Okay, so moving right along, I'd like to make a motion to pass the minutes of May 11th, both public and executive session. Peter, who needs to? Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? There you go.
Duly noted, passes 701.
Okay, so we have our first opportunity for public commentary. I did receive one email. Mike, let me know if there's any others. Was it just Amy's?
Only Amy's, except that I've had a couple of staff members just letting me know as parents they didn't receive the survey that I sent out on Friday. So there might have been an issue with School Messenger, so I will resend it either tonight or tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's on the front page of our website.
So it was sent to the parents? I'm sorry.
I sent to all the parents in the district, but there must have been a glitch with School Messenger because it sounds like they didn't get it. So it's.
Did you guys get it? No? Okay.
All right. Out it will go again.
Okay, very good.
Friday
Last week.
afternoon.
Okay, great. So then I did get one email from Amy Reale, which I'd like to read. Amy Reale resides in the borough. So I understand there's a lot of unexpected challenges to be faced in the coming months, and that perhaps children with IEPs have struggled the most with distance learning. This is heartbreaking for all involved, since some of the children are already well behind their peers. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I would like to request that the school districts of the Chatham hire an educational data consultant to take a closer look at the measures we use across the board to gauge the needs of our students and ensure quality instruction. From what I understand from our various CPAG/district meetings, general ed and special ed are canaring two different ships. And this makes it easier for kids to fall through the cracks. In the fall, we will have some students behind from missing classroom time and some behind from learning differences. How can we determine those various needs so that the special education doesn't get inundated? And then there's a budget type of question. With a spending freeze in place that includes professional development, will you help parents understand how the potential surplus of funds will be used in the coming year and beyond building prep and PE? I tried to look at the numbers presented, and I don't understand why our IDEA funds are completely used and what putting $2 million in capital reserve means for our children. Thank you, Amy Reale. So on the data consultant, I know that's been talked about at length at the CPAG meetings because I've sat through at least 3 of them. I don't have an answer on the budget, Matt, or Peter, or Mike.
Well, it's an up to $2 million number, so there's no actual $2 million figure. And that's just an arbitrary figure that's been used for a long time. So we do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe this year we do have the potential, we do sweep funds at the end of the fiscal year into our cap reserve, but if required, I believe we can take some back to cover operating, correct? Isn't that what was explained to me?
I didn't hear the comment fully, but with the 2 resolutions that are out there, this year is an exception because there are rumblings in the state that the state may allow, if districts put money into their emergency reserve, the rumblings are that the state may allow the district upon an application to use some of those emergency funds to offset the additional COVID-related expenses that the districts will incur. So there is still not clarification, so that resolution is on the agenda as a placeholder, and the final numbers as to excess are not determined until the audit is finished, which is, usually, this year will probably be August, September. So we will definitely have answers from the state about what they will allow before we even determine to fund an emergency reserve. Every year we use the bulk of our surplus to fund capital reserve so that the district can be very prudent and fund its own construction and own physical plant improvements. This year, with the additional expenses that we had on maintaining the buildings, I don't anticipate a large amount. I anticipate between maybe $500,000 and $700,000, which is far less than in the past. And unfortunately, under state requirements, we just can't say, oh, I want to spend it on X, Y, or Z. There's certain restrictions as to where the money can be used. Putting it into capital reserve is the most prudent, so that we can do things like next year we need to make the nurses' restroom ADA compliant at the middle school. We had the funds because of prior deposits to capital reserve, without going back and having to put that in the budget and cut other things out of the budget in order to fund the project. So
we also put a moratorium on spending this summer in anticipating of losing state aid as well as additional expenses due to the COVID virus. We have no idea if we have to buy masks and supply a mask for every student, every staff member, we're going to need, I think, Mike, you said tens of thousands of them.
Yes. And the other one is, not even adding to the cost of the mask, depending on what policies and procedures we have to follow for disinfecting.
Right.
We may need extra staff to run around and wipe all of the touch points multiple times during the day.
Or security at the door taking temperatures.
Right. And we have purchased some of the disinfectant sprayers, but the disinfectant that goes into these sprayers is not inexpensive. This is expensive stuff if you're going to walk around, depending how often you're going to go around with the sprayer and spray locations. It would be much more effective than doing during the normal nighttime cleaning to do it during the day, but that takes manpower and it takes supplies. So, we're trying to be very prudent with everything going on so that we can divert resources, for, these things that are ultimately going to be needed for everyone's health and safety.
And can that money be used for those expenses?
We're hopeful that if we fund the emergency reserve, yes, we'd be able to use those. Okay. The capital reserve money, no, but the regulations say that the emergency reserve cannot exceed $250,000. So, that's the amount we'd be able to put in.
Okay.
And we're hopeful that the state, with cutting the budgets, will allow districts to tap into the non-emergency reserve for expenses as well, but we're waiting on those guidelines, to come out as well.
The other thing to think about too is no matter when we open up school, and it will happen eventually, but our transportation costs are going to triple.
Right.
There's no question about it. We can't have 58 kids on a bus anymore. So those costs are definitely going to go up. So we need to be as prudent as possible.
And can we pay those costs? I'm getting a little tripped up. If it's in capital reserve, are we going to need some type of dispensation in order to pay for operating expenses? That's what I'm trying to discern here.
Yes.
Yes,
so-
is the answer yes?
Yes. That's what I was. That was
I
my-
hear a shrug, I see a yes.
Well, hold on. Let's
We're
go back to
hopeful
the
that the
08.
answer would be yes. There is a bill that just left, I think, the Senate, a committee in the Senate, to enable any amount of money a district has in capital reserve to be used for any COVID-related expense. That hasn't been voted on at the full floor of the Assembly or the Senate yet, but that is something we anticipate could be a reality, and especially if funding is further reduced at the end of August, which everyone expects will happen.
Reduced beyond the additional that we were given, it might go back into our actual operating budget. Or we don't know.
Well, we don't know what.
We're anticipating that year 3 is gone. Are we going to lose more than year 3?
The governor announced that aid would be reduced, but in reality, we haven't received those state aid figures. We haven't received a formal notice that our state aid was going to be reduced because it's technically an appropriation that requires the legislature to act. So, and that is part of the state's budget, which was delayed from the June 30th date to September 30th. So what folks are anticipating is that as the state gets a better sense of its financial condition after the July 15th deadline for the tax filings, then come the end of August, we'll get revised numbers, newly revised numbers. The initial pass and why we lost the $300,000 roughly was that they were returning districts to their SIFRA funding from this current school year, 2019-2020. And not ramping up SIFRA like they had intended to do for the following year's budget. The signals from the Murphy administration is they don't want to move off of SIFRA, so they're, of course, trying to borrow money right now, and they have the authorization from the Assembly, I believe, to do that. But if they don't have enough money to make up the shortfalls, they still don't want to move off of SIFRA, which would mean we wouldn't get the type of 80% reduction that we received 10 years ago. We might get another 10% or another 15%. But from what we're being told, there's a desire to maintain the SIFRA formula for all school districts.
Okay.
Back in 08-09, they swept our cap reserves.
Yes, and we've been told
So-
that they don't have plans to do that
Okay,
either.
that's fine, but I also would think there's going to have to be, I would imagine there's going to be a lot of leniency come August in terms of the use of cap reserves, just because of the fact that there's going to be reduction in state aid and there's going to be increased expenses, right? They're not coming off the 2%, the tax, all that kind of stuff. So I would take the gamble is that we're going to have flexibility with that cap reserve as to how it's spent.
Yeah, I will just mention
Because
too.
everyone's going to go back and try to tap it, because everyone's going to be asking for the ability to do it.
That's
Right.
a great point. On the academic sides of the questions, I've been pitched many times by educational data consultants. I haven't, felt the need to recommend that we move in that direction. But we have been looking at various programs that would offer more supplemental support to all of our students, gen ed as well as special education learners, so that if we are forced out again, and even if we're not, we have an additional tool to turn to. So our supervisors have been meeting with Ms. Chase. Dr. D'Elia has been meeting with his people to look at programs and make investments in certain areas to buttress some of what we can provide online to students. And just to kind of clarify, one of the reasons why we froze professional development was to be sure that we could allocate our resources most productively given all of these conditions that we're dealing with. So we still will have some professional development. For example, if we invest in a program specifically that's adaptive for some of our special education students, we would provide professional development to our teachers for a program like that. We have a curriculum committee meeting this Wednesday with our supervisor of social studies, supervisor of ELA, because in both of those disciplines, we do quite a bit of work in social justice, racial inequality, issues that obviously are so crucial to us all right now. We might look to invest in professional development in a very targeted manner so that we can continue to get better at what we do in the education of children in that regard. So we put a halt on certain kinds of spending with the goal of prioritizing spending so that we could have the biggest bang for the buck given all of these sort of changing conditions that we're dealing with. And we'll see what, hopefully that yields some good, some good fruit for us as we move forward into next year. And just like Peter said, I don't need to belabor this, but we put money into capital reserve every year. We don't have $2 million, unfortunately, to put in this year. We probably, unfortunately, are able to invest less in capital reserve than most other districts relative to the budget that we have. But that money does go to students. So making the middle school bathroom accessible, that is a benefit to students. We have an issue at Southern Boulevard. I was at Southern Boulevard School today. We have a nurse's office. The sink is inside the restroom in the nurse's office there. So if a student is vomiting in the restroom and 4 other students are in the nurse's office, there's no sink or running water that the nurse can use. We have to take money out of capital reserve this summer to address that situation, which will cost a little bit of money. But those investments are to the benefit of students. We're sitting in a room with shatterproof window glaze that bullets can't knock out all of the windows because we made that investment 2 years ago, I think it was. That's to protect children. So the capital reserve money is not just some account that doesn't eventually get reinvested in students. Ultimately, all of that is reinvested in students in some way. It just might not be as directly tied to academics, but it still makes the district run and helps us do what we think is appropriate for kids.
Okay, thank you. Did anybody else receive any emails from anybody regarding public commentary? No, just checking. Mike, were you able to check the account just real quick? I don't always get cell service. I just want to make sure.
The parent survey problem and then that one email.
And Amy, okay, very good. Then we're going to close the public commentary. Yep.
The survey, it might be a good idea to send an email and say, I will be sending out a survey, and that way people can anticipate getting it. That way if they don't get it, then you don't know you didn't get it if you didn't get it, if you get what I'm saying. It's like, I didn't know that I didn't get it. So I think we need to give some ample warning so we get accurate feedback on the survey.
I will resend it for sure, but I'll announce now it's posted on the front page of our website. So if you click on the front page of the school district website, it says, please take the time to complete this parent survey about virtual learning. So I'll make sure it gets where it's supposed to go.
Okay. And it's only germane to parents with students in the district, right? There's no benefit to...
Yes. It's, questions like, were you satisfied with the communication you received from from your child's teacher, from your building principal? Next year, if it's not possible for us to all have students in the same, in school, all of them at the same time, would you prefer that students come once every 3 days, or would you prefer a student come 1 week on, 2 weeks off? Have your children taken the bus in prior years? If the answer is yes, would you place your child on a bus this coming year? Will you send your child to school if we are open physically? And again, I had written in the message that didn't go out that this was not meant to be definitive. It's just kind of exploratory, getting a sense of where people are and how they're feeling as we enter the summer, so that we have just a little bit of background.
Okay, well, that should be getting... Can the board, the parents on the board, can you let Mike know when you do get it so we can get definitive confirmation of that? Excellent. So we're going to move over to personnel. Ann?
Yeah, I want to move action items A1 to A23 on the regular agenda, and then also 13 and 24 on the addendum.
13 and 24. And Mike, 24 is the paraprofessionals, correct, at each of the school buildings?
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions for Ann or Mike on any of the personnel items?
I just have to step in the absence of Ms. Grant. On A2, Christine Franz, her effective date is July 1, 2020 until June 30th, 2021. So she'll be in place the entire next school year. And that will be corrected in the minutes.
Okay. On 8?
On A2.
2, sorry.
She's the 4th employee down. And I just need a second on the personnel, please.
I'll second.
There you go. Excellent. Any questions for Ann or Mike, or apparently Peter, who's stepping in for Beth? She's probably cringing right now.
Snooze, you lose.
She's, oh, poor Beth. She's just not feeling well. Okay, very good, thank you. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I have an abstention on 21 and 22.
Thank you, Mike.
Duly noted.
Okay,
Agenda items pass 8-0 with the exception of A21 and A22, 701.
excellent. Okay, very good, thank you. Moving over to finance and facilities, Matt?
The 1 through 29 on your regular agenda.
I'll second.
Just one donation to be thankful for. It's a donation from the Fidelity Charitable on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. David Shipler, an amount of $500 towards the Shipler Scholarship Fund.
I just want to note for clarification on all of the finance, a few of the finance items. I know we spoke already about the transfers to reserve, but the one item that I was asked to clarify is under the IDA grant submission. There is approximately $33,000 noted for non-public schools. That money is mandated by the state, and it goes to both Chatham Day School and St. Patrick's School. So the state allocates a certain amount of money to go to the non-publics within the school district, and those are the two recipients of the non-public money.
Okay.
And Dr. Dalia works with them on how to get it spent and oversees the spending.
Is that our role to oversee it, or? Yes? Okay. That is our responsibility, or by R, I mean you? I meant the collective R, but really you. Okay, very good. Any questions on finance and facilities from Peter or Matt, for Peter or Matt, or anybody on the finance team? No? Very good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Oh, sorry.
Just on item 26, abstain.
So Bradley's abstaining on 26, and Michelle? Oh, and one abstention on the whole packet of finance for Michelle. Are you good, Peter,
Yes.
with that? Okay, very good. Moving on to curriculum, Ms. Kenny?
Yes, I'd like to move action items C1 to C3 for vote.
We can't have any questions on 1 and 2. 3, does anybody have any questions on the remote learning plan? Karen, is this just updated based on the fact that we went from brick and mortar to remote learning 100% on March 13th? You just updated every page?
Yes, and I think we were also updating the ESY program.
The SY program? And are you expecting the county office to get back to you with a yay or nay, or is it just something you're putting on file?
I don't believe they're.
The county office already approved the plan.
Oh, okay.
They emailed us on May 6th or so saying we needed to update our plans that were in effect, and they needed to be submitted by May 22nd. And if it was not possible to update the plan before then, we had to submit it and then get approval after the fact from the board.
Okay.
So, been approved, and it's for last school year, and then as we make all of our upgrades to the plan for next school year, we'll resubmit again.
Okay. And this is that approval from the board right now, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Does anybody else have any questions on that? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Very good, there you go.
Duly noted, items C, 1, 2, and 3 pass 8-0.
Excellent. Mr. Ryan, any audibles for policy? No?
Nothing at this time.
None at this time, okay. We look forward to the next marathon policy report. Board business, other than, Ann, you just mentioned graduation, we're still on target for July 8th as of right now, correct, Mike?
Yes.
Or shooting for. We're anticipating the governor will allow up to 500 people
Yes.
outdoors at that time. I think it was up to 250 today.
On the 6th.
500 as of July 2nd.
Second.
Okay, okay. I was hoping you'd say it was 1,000 by July 2nd, but
That would make it easier.
it would make it much easier. And currently, the idea is to do split session and at one of the fields, either Cougar or behind the high school.
And the overwhelming feedback from students was Cougar Field.
Okay. To
So-
do it, Cougar with the students on the turf and the
Yes.
families in the
In the
home and
bleachers.
away stands?
Yep.
And on the track if need be?
I don't know about the track, but the bleachers for sure.
Okay. Okay, just wherever they
Which
could.
is how we used to do it a long, long time ago.
Yep. Yep. Good old days. Okay, very good. I don't have any additional board business. Anybody else have anything pressing? No? Okay. We have our second opportunity for public commentary. I did not receive anything. I don't always get great cell service, so I'm just going to ask Mike to confirm that.
We have not gotten anything, and I did resend the survey, so if our parents on the board might check their cell phones,
Their devices?
that'd be great.
Let's just double check. So you were doing that while you were listening to us intently?
I was trying to multitask like a teenager.
Yeah, it just came through.
Okay, very good. Okay, there you go.
All right.
So either you sent it to the four of them or it went out. Excellent. We do not have an executive session, correct?
No executive session.
That anybody needs? Okay, great, because it's 100 degrees in here now. But, okay, so I make a motion to close the public meeting. Everybody good with that?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming. Ryan, thank you. I appreciate it. Connor, thanks.